Tennyson, Shaw, Shakespeare, Dickens. What a wealth of literature there is in a library if you can read. But many people are surprised to find out that millions and millions of Americans cannot read. They are functionally illiterate. And in many communities around the country right now, computers are being used to help solve the problem of adult illiteracy. Today we take a look at computers and illiteracy on this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte magazine, and Bix, the Byte Information Exchange. In print and online, Byte and Bix serve computer professionals worldwide with detailed information on new hardware, software, and technologies.
Welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stuart Chaffee, and with me this week is Jan Lewis. Jan, I'm looking at two job application forms here. This is to become a waiter. This is to become a gas station service attendant. We're pretty well-educated people, yet we're having trouble figuring out how you fill in all the blanks in this thing. You can imagine what it must be like if you're functionally illiterate. We're taking a look at the use of computers in adult literacy training today. Computers seem to be doing a very good job there, despite the fact that we hear traditional computer-aided instruction in schools is not working too well. Why is that?
What we're really seeing here, Stuart, is a difference in the implementation at the adult level versus at the elementary school level. But the theory still holds at both levels. The theory, of course, is that somebody can learn better if they can learn at their own pace, if they can learn in a non-threatening environment, nobody's looking over their shoulder, and also if they can get the instantaneous feedback that they get from the computers. So the real difference has simply been in implementation. Very successful adult programs in corporations and illiteracy, in the armed services, etc.
Jan, we're going to travel from Pennsylvania to Michigan and California today to see several examples of how computers are being used successfully in adult literacy training programs. We're going to start out by looking at a California program that uses Apple II computers and off-the-shelf software.
California is at the forefront of the literacy movement. $4 million goes annually to libraries where the 3 R's are taught to adults free of charge. And of all the participating libraries, Richmond is considered a leader in the use of computers to teach literacy. Computers were, in fact, a key element right from the start in the Richmond Library's literacy program called LEAP.
The computer is really non-judgmental. It's real private. It doesn't tell you that, oh, I'm tired. I'm tired of you working on that problem. Let's go back to it. Let's come back to it next week. One student commented about the repetition, that you need to have things in repetition to be able to learn them sometimes. And with a tutor, even if you have a tutor that's very understanding, the student may just feel embarrassed about having to be constantly going over the same thing with the tutor. But with the machine, it's just there.
Students in the LEAP program range from those who can't read at all to those who simply need to increase their spelling skills or reading comprehension. That wide range of needs initially prompted months of research. Staffers finally settled on some 20 software programs that they use regularly. But setting up such a program was no easy task. Most literacy software is designed for children learning how to read and write. And the people here had to find software that wouldn't talk down to adults.
When we first started, it was very hard, and we picked a lot of different things, and we figured that we would experiment and find out what things worked well. And there are some things that are available now. I think the big market is remedial work in high school, and so we have a lot of things that are kind of directed at young adults, and that's okay. There is a growing market, I think, in adult schools and community colleges for people who are learning how to read as adults. And I'd like to see there being more. There are a lot of possibilities in speech, with the speech capability of the computer, so that it can work at a really basic level and make things accessible to people who are learning at a basic level. But I still think it's pretty wide open. I'd like to see some other things getting developed, definitely.
Still, most students say they're pleased with the software, and the computer has helped them.
It's much easier on the computer because they have games you can play, so it makes it more interesting, more of a challenge than it would be to just sit and say, well, I'm going to memorize this and write it this way over and over and over and all that kind of stuff. This makes it easier, and it makes it a challenge, and it makes it fun, so you want to do it. So that's the difference between doing it on your own and doing it on a computer, for me anyway.
The next addition to the Richmond LEAP program will be a Macintosh. Staffers say they want to find out how the use of a mouse, bypassing the keyboard, aids in the teaching of reading. In Richmond, for the Computer Chronicles, I'm Wendy Woods.
Joining us now in the studio is John Fleischman. John is Administrator of Media Services for the Los Angeles County Jail Correctional Education Program. And next to John, Jane Nissen-Laidley, Executive Director of the People's Computer Company, PCC, Inc. Jan?
John, we hear a lot about functional illiteracy. Exactly what does that mean?
Functional illiteracy basically is a person's inability to deal with the reading and writing they need to function effectively in everyday life. There are very few true illiterates anymore. Most people can read and write their name. So the new tag that's been put on it is functional illiteracy.
Now, how does the computer help them?
The computer is an infinitely patient tool. And many adults, illiterates, who can't read well don't like to admit that they can't read. They don't like to go into a reading program and indicate to a person that they can't do the things they need to do in their lives. The tutor doesn't know. The computer doesn't know.
Jane, what does your company, the People's Computer Company, do in the area of illiteracy?
We were a consultant for a project that was a first time using computers in a volunteer tutoring project at the Richmond Public Library, which you have just taken a look at.
And what approach do you take to that?
We wanted to use the computer to teach writing and reading skills. We had a volunteer program with one-to-one tutoring in the past, and we wanted to see what happened when we used the tutor, the student, and a computer to help deliver that instruction.
And is the idea generally accepted that computers contribute something extra? Is there any resistance among the human tutors who think they can do this better without a computer?
There's more resistance from the tutor than from the students in the study that we found in our work in Richmond. But that was primarily because the tutor has lived and taught for maybe 50 to 60 years without a computer, does not need to, and the time required to learn a new technology and a new skill was something that they didn't expect to be part of their job when they were volunteering to be a tutor to teach someone to read. So it's just that getting over the technology.
How do you find the balance between how much computer and how much human tutor any particular student needs? How do you balance that?
Well, we recommended and implemented in the Richmond project that the tutor and the student stay together for a number of hours, that most of the instructional materials that we wrote required the tutor and the student to be together in the beginning. What surprised us in the study results was that the student moved to independent use on the computer faster and sooner than we anticipated in writing our materials, and we had to go back and acknowledge that.
Jane, it's kind of surprising. The stereotype is the adult is less likely to feel comfortable at the computer keyboard than the child is. True. And yet you're telling us the adult is in fact very comfortable in this environment.
I'm telling you that the learner is comfortable. You see, in the pair that you're talking about, one is the teacher and one is the student. The student is eager. And in the case of the illiterate adult, you're talking about an individual who has had not much success in their life in a lot of areas, and especially in learning. You're talking about someone who really believes that technology, or especially computers, would never be available to them. That's something that the rest of the world has, even young children in school. So when we brought these into an adult and said, you can use this, the empowerment and the excitement was just magnificent.
John, you're dealing with a special kind of adult, jail inmates. How does it work in that environment?
They're lined up too deep to use the computers.
Really?
They're very, very fascinated. The time on task, which is an educator's term to determine, the amount of time they spend in the educational materials, is incredible. They're totally focused on the computer when they're working on it. It's difficult to get them away from the machine. So they're very, very anxious to use the hardware.
Do you have any testing evidence to suggest the stuff really works, or is it sort of intuition at the moment?
I think I'll give that to Jane.
Okay. The study that we did was an ethnographic study that ran over a year, concrete interviews and statistics that were gathered over a 6 months period of time. It's probably the first in California and one of very few done in the United States. I would like a lot more done, but people don't fund the research. All we can get funded so far is maybe one computer. But our study is available through the California State Library and is worth taking a look at for other people to take the and jump off and go do some more work.
Jane and John, I want to stop here just a second. I know you have a piece of software you want to show us. There's another very innovative use of computers in Pennsylvania right now, something called the Talking Computer Program, and it was developed at Penn State University. This is Northwest Elementary School in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. Most of the students here are kids, but lately some new students have been showing up, grown-ups, coming here to learn how to keep up with their kids, coming to learn how to read.
Joan likes bread for lunch.
Debbie Sawyer is a mother of two. She's a high school graduate, but she can't read as well as her 9-year-old daughter Tanya, who's in the 4th grade. That makes it tough for Mom to help with the homework.
Well, their homework, like the oldest one, she's got spelling words I can't even do. She's got to, you know, help me say them or with her homework and that. But it's the words that I have trouble with, and this is helping me.
Debbie is working on a computer-based literacy training course. It uses a voice synthesizer so that the computer can communicate with the student, even though the student can't read. The program is written in a language called Super Pilot. It uses an Apple IIe and an Echo voice synthesizer. One problem with computer-based literacy courses is that they require expensive computers. But the woman in charge of the Penn State program says that need not be a problem.
We hope more businesses and industries that are opening up the use of their computer facilities after hours to adult literacy programs. We need to see a lot more of this after-hours usage on the part of business and industry, because computers sit idle from 5 until 9 the next morning and would be ideal for teaching someone how to read.
The Penn State software is unique in teaching reading by showing the students word configurations based on research which shows that adult learners recognize the shape of words more than their phonetic sounds. But the computer does more than just help teach reading. It helps restore the student's sense of self-esteem.
The sensitivity of the subject of an adult not being able to read, I think that it is minimized, then they feel belittled, and I think the computer helps that self-esteem, and they're saying, well, look, I can handle this computer. It's technology that's advanced, and it improves in their eyes their perception that, well, they're a great person, they can run a computer, and that in itself helps.
When Debbie and her tutor Dolores first started using the computer courseware, they were both scared, both afraid that they couldn't do it. But now they both love it, and Dolores says she's a computer convert.
I think the computer is a great thing, and it's coming to the age where it's going to be a computer age, right? So I just adjust with it and I go with the times.
Next up, a program called LEAP for the Apple II. It's being used to teach literacy to prison inmates in Los Angeles. We're back in the studio again with John Fleischman and Jane Nissen-Lately. Jan.
John, you have a new piece of software here that you're going to show us. Tell me a little bit about it.
This particular program is produced by Educational Activities Incorporated. It's brand new on the market, 1987. It's called the Language Experience Program 1, LEAP 1. What it does is it uses a person's existing skills, the ability, their own knowledge about their family, their friends, and then channels that into a reading lesson. It's kind of like the next generation of word processors used for a reading instruction program. Now what we have here, we've already gone past the opening logo. We're into the program. It's a very personalized and very interactive program. So what I'd like you to do is to go ahead and select an area that you would like to write about. You have a choice, relatives, jobs, memory. So
okay, so I'm going to be the functionally illiterate
you're going to be
student.
the student and I'm going to be the teacher.
Okay, so I want to see job, let's say.
Now most of the activities would actually happen by the student. There are points where you would sit down with the teacher to correct grammar and review the material.
So Jan might be doing this herself at the terminal. Okay, well go ahead, Jan.
Okay, so let's say job.
You've indicated job.
Okay. They'd like to know more about the job. Press any key to continue. Just like that, right?
Just like that.
Okay. Tell me about your job. Okay, so now it's going to have me put some things in here.
It's giving you some instructions now, some basic instruction. Initially, of course, I would sit with you to explain this process. So
yeah, John, is there a problem? There's some sophisticated reading capability necessary to get through this. Is that a problem?
That would be a real big problem for someone reading on a 1.5 grade level. So they would have to work with the teacher initially or work with another student who's reading at a higher level. So this is basically the instructions now.
Okay, Jan,
go ahead and advance it on.
Okay, let's continue. Okay, so it wants me to write 3 sentences. So let's say, I like my job, and I work in a, factory.
Okay, now even if that spelling's incorrect.
Okay, and then I can do that pound sign.
Okay, and return.
Okay.
Okay, now here's a good example. You didn't follow the instructions. You must write at least 3 sentences. Please add to what you have written. So if you press any key to continue, it will take you back to that original, what you were writing, and now you will add in your 3rd sentence.
I see, okay.
Now, of course, you can write more than 3 sentences. The idea here is your own words, it's your own story. It has much more meaning for the adult learner. The next thing that would happen is you would take your story up to the teacher, and the teacher would put another disc.
Let's see, she's finished. Okay, you've typed your 3rd sentence now.
Okay, so that's...
And what do you have to enter the pound sign now to see if it'll accept it this time?
Okay,
try that.
so enter the pound
sign and
then return.
That's right.
Let's see if it takes it.
Okay,
Looks like it takes it. So I like it.
It's
I'll say yes.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, now what happens then, John?
Okay, now what you would do is then take this story up to the teacher or to the tutor. You would sit down with that teacher and together you would review the story. Now here you spelled factory incorrect. So you would actually retype the story again, spelling it correctly with the grammar correctly. And then it would record on your own personalized diskette all of your stories. There's a total of about 25 hours of instruction as you go through the program, records all your personalized stories, and then there are many, many follow-up activities, pulling out specialized vocabulary words, doing activity sheets, all related to your own vocabulary. That's why it's a very powerful program for adults.
Jane, how is this different from having John as an instructor say to me in my little copybook, write 3 sentences about your life, and I hand him the piece of paper? What's added here?
What's very different is that for an adult who has difficulty reading, for the most case they have difficulty writing, and you're talking about 2 separate skills. One is a handwriting skill that has to do with lots of practice and small and large motors going at the same time. In the case of using word processor, and we used it in Richmond for this very reason, is that the very first time the student is on that computer, they can push a button and take printed copy and take it home and own it. I have a completed story that other people can read, and it's very important to be able to write first and then have someone else read it, and they can also read it themselves back in practice. The handwriting does not get in the way.
Does this add to the cost of educating the student? In other words, what is the cost-benefit trade-off here?
We certainly didn't do a lot of cost factor in terms of actual cost of software against hours, man-hours. I would suspect that in a volunteer program, it's extremely cost-effective, and would say so because of the amount of use by the students on their own. Once you get over the cost of training the volunteers, they have another instructor and more hours of instruction. We had them using the lab more hours because they could do it on their own than they would have before we had the computers.
Jane, John, thank you very much. We're going to take a look at another innovative example. Now, this is a system, an expensive one, developed by IBM and being used very successfully now in Michigan to retrain auto workers. Let's go there for that story.
Flint, Michigan is one of the capitals of the auto industry, and it reflects many of the difficulties faced by auto manufacturers. For many laid-off workers, the plant closures mean job retraining, and for some, that includes such basics as learning how to read.
Flint is in transition in terms of industry. We're going from an industry that required heavy manual labor with less academic and competency skills as far as academics, to a very high-tech industrial community. And as you look at the history of people who came out of public schools, some graduating, some not graduating, and going into industry, they could obtain very good jobs, high-paying jobs with minimal skills. Today, that is not the case.
Flint is also the test center for a revolutionary approach to teaching literacy with computers for beginning readers and for those who never learned. The program is called PALS, or Principles of Alphabet Literacy System. PALS grew out of a program aimed at teaching reading and writing skills to kindergarten-age children. It was developed by Dr. John Martin and has been licensed by IBM.
With the single most difficult thing there is to learn in the English-speaking world, learning to read. We have the highest rate of failure in that level of learning than anything else that occurs between age 5 and 25.
The PALS adult classroom has Laserdisc players, touch-sensitive computer screens, typewriters, and PCs. From the moment students arrive, they are immersed in computer technology. The textbook is on a Laserdisc in the form of a story related in comic book style. Students learn touch typing simultaneously, and they can proceed at their own pace, something Dr. Martin believes is very important.
Coming to the computer without the intervention of an adult means that, in effect, they are teaching themselves through the vehicle of the computer. This seeming dehumanization, which some people decry as a technological intrusion, as a matter of fact, is very therapeutic. Because, you see, the damage to them has been done by people.
After 20 weeks in the PALS program, about 80% of the students have improved their reading skills by an average of 2.5 years of schooling. The self-paced rate of instruction seems to be an important part of that success.
It was breaking the words down. You were using the alphabets more often, learning the sounds, because you have a lot of sounds are alike. During the time that I was in school, your teacher would just flop it on you, and you either learn it or you didn't. But here, I worked at my own pace.
When I took this class, I learned how to read things that I've never even read before. And as of today, I can fill out an application. I can go to any place and fill out an application.
From a teacher's point of view, the central role of the PC might appear to be a threat, but instructors play a pivotal role.
It gave me more time then to circulate and talk to individuals about individual problems. It did all the legwork for me. Rather than having to stand and lecture in front of the class, the computer did a lot of that tutorial work for me. And I could concentrate on the special cases and problems and individualize the lesson.
PALS was adapted from Dr. Martin's reading program for children called Writing to Read, which shares the same underlying concepts as PALS. To watch 5-year-olds using Writing to Read is to raise one's perception of what a young mind can learn.
We're invited to learn in abysmally poor ways, but in Writing to Read and in PALS, I bring to the fore the intellectual structure of what a word is. Make it apparent to a student that a physical representation of a word is a symbol system called the alphabet that represents the sounds you make when you speak that word.
Say book. Dr. Martin notes that it's too early to tell if computer instruction indicates the need for a radical restructuring of teaching methods, but he does anticipate some major changes.
I know this much, having lived my life in the world of the schools, that the concept that a school consisted of a series of boxes in which you put 25 to 30 children and one teacher all day, or move them around and called it a secondary school, and they went to specialized classes for language and science and so on. I think technology is going to blow those walls apart.
That's our look at computers and illiteracy. If you would like information about contacting a literacy training center in your community, call Contact Literacy. The number is 800-228-8813. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned now for this week's Computer News.
In the Random Access File this week. If you're a Macintosh user frustrated by the lack of a laptop, Cambridge North America may have a solution for you. They've announced the Mac Lite package, which includes the small 2-pound Cambridge Z88 laptop and a special EEPROM, which enables the Z88 to read Mac files. The package includes the software for the Mac, a serial cable, and an extra 128K chip for the laptop. The Z88 has an 8-line by 80-column Super Twist display. The system will be introduced at the upcoming Macworld Expo in San Francisco. Tandy and U.S. computer technology in general got a shot in the arm this week when the Japanese company Matsushita announced that it will be selling Tandy PCs under its Panasonic brand name. The Panasonic PCs will be marketed in the United States and in Europe. And there is good news on the U.S. software front. The U.S. Commerce Department says that the U.S. software industry is booming in Japan, where 1988 sales are expected to top $10 billion. That represents an annual growth rate of nearly 30%. Commerce says the Japanese market for U.S. software is growing at twice the rate of the domestic U.S. market. And the Japanese company Sanyo has announced that it is moving its personal computer research facilities from Japan to the United States. Sanyo is also looking for a new U.S.-based manufacturing facility. The bad news is that the Japanese company Nintendo has taken over the U.S. video game market, and to make the situation even worse, Nintendo game consoles lock out game cartridges made by other manufacturers. So Atari is suing Nintendo, charging them with monopoly and restraint of competition. Time now for this week's software review. Here's Paul Schindler.
This doesn't really work very well if you want to get two people to talk to each other. They should just call directly. Well, the same thing was true for two people working on PCs in distant locations until InSync came along. Now, the idea behind this package is simple. I sit at my computer screen, you sit at yours. I load my word processor, for example, then use this memory-resident program to dial you. You've also loaded the same word processor. I send you a file, you load it on your screen, and when I move my cursor, the cursor on your screen moves the same way. It's like two people in distant cities working on the same sheet of paper or the same computer screen. Anything I can make appear on my screen, I can send down the phone line to your screen. Now, we used a word processor as our example, but you could just as easily have two people working on a spreadsheet. What a concept! Best of all, InSync is not copy protected, which makes it easy to load on a hard disk and easy to use. InSync, $500, American Video in Farmingdale, New York. For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Paul Schindler.
Finally, you've heard of the Scion Organizer, the Sharp Wizard, and the Casio Digital Diary. Well, here comes the Good Byte. It's a $200 pocket-sized computer that does one thing: find quotes from the Bible. The Good Byte will have the entire text of the Bible in memory and feature sophisticated word search software to enable users to find biblical quotes on any subject. The Good Byte will be introduced at this month's Consumer Electronics Show in, of all places, Las Vegas. That's it for this week's Random Access. I'm Cynthia Steele.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte Magazine, and Bix, the Byte Information Exchange. In print and online, Byte and Bix serve computer professionals worldwide with detailed information on new hardware, software, and technologies.
For a transcript of this week's Computer Chronicles, send $4 to PTV Publications, Post Office Box 701, Kent, Ohio 44240. Please indicate program date.